Hello. We're getting into what I think is one of the most exciting topics of this cycle. Like there is a lot of new networks trying to bootstrap, and not all of them are successful. So I just want to kick it off with like an easy one. What were the non-negotiables that you guys had when you started incubating Katana, and specifically like what were the pitfalls you saw others doing? You were like we're definitely not doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the most obvious one is like what we're doing that is, I think, strategically just completely different from how anyone else has approached DeFi on a chain in general, which is the idea of having like a set of like core partners. So on Katana, what is very unique is that you only have one lending protocol, you only have one spot DEX, you only have one perp DEX, you will only have one meme coin launchpad. This is done in a very permissionless way, and that's just done through various incentives. But this is like very different, right? Because if you just like imagine a world where like Binance was like, hey, I'm going to have a different order book in, every single country. And by the way, I'm going to call one Binance, I'm going to call one, Binance 2 and one Binance 3. Like it would be the most insane thing possible, except that's exactly what has been done on chains. And so to me, that was like the biggest like non-negotiable.
Yeah, I mean, I think we will go into it later, but I think from our side, we sort of believe that opinionated chain will start taking more and more market share from general purpose chains, particularly in key narratives that need to be sold, and DeFi being one of those, where fragmentation is not necessarily a good thing. Concentration is a good thing, and I think we'll go into that. So that was probably one of the things that attracted us the most with Katana, and the other part is the sort of top-down, bottom-up way of building things. I think that we have seen many successful protocols that have the bottom-up process where they basically centralize all their potential growth around the core app, and that's really what values it. You've seen that with Ethena, you've seen that with Hyperliquid. These are chains which all its success is going to be synced to this super app, versus Katana is much more of a top-down approach, where we have a number of core apps that will stack yield and stack liquidity, and that's quite important to build more of a big chain ecosystem for DeFi. So those are probably the main attractions.
So, I love the fact that the analogy is like, a lot of the talks here were like networks as nations. So the main export of Katana Nation would it be liquidity? Because you mentioned, like these networks that are like app specific, and like there is a single main value prop. Is liquidity gonna be like the main value prop on Katana?
I think of it as like two things. So first, like if we just think of DeFi in general, like look, I love the crazy shit that we build in DeFi just as much as the next person, but like we build too much crazy shit just to build crazy shit. And when you actually talk to users about what do they really care about, it comes down to two things. It's like, I want deep liquidity and I want high yields. That's really it. Their number three is like security, basically every time, but that's like just baseline requirement. And
you have to say, you cannot not say security.
Yeah, you can't not say security.
It's like I have to mention that, so just let me slot it in there.
Yeah, but I mean, honestly, given how lots of things have gone, it's almost like for many teams, you might need to mention it. For us, it's just always been like the baseline requirement. But yeah, so it's like ultimately it comes down to liquidity and yields, because it's all about just delivering to users what they actually want. And that's the things they care about.
We've seen a lot of like, specifically, like liquidity and yield. We've seen a lot of networks just like, I'm gonna like shower people with yield and hope they show up. What have you done differently? Like how have you structured incentives differently around bootstrapping Katana?
Yeah, so it's all about sustainability. So like you can get deep liquidity, actually probably that's pretty hard to do in an unsustainable way. You can get like high yields with just a shitload of tokens going out. The big thing that's different about Katana is the kind of leveraging like real yield sources, right? So like we will have token emissions. There's a token called CAT, like that'll be tons of fun. All of the core apps like Morphone, Sushi as an example, like give out tokens as emissions as well. But the kind of key distinguishing factor is like 3 sources of yield that you don't necessarily get on other chains. Like the first one is using a protocol that Polygon built called VaultBridge, which is basically like all deposits of USDC, USDT, ETH, and BTC into the chain are deposited into Morpho vaults on Ethereum. Those assets are lent out, and all of that yield goes right back into those core applications and flows through to the users, right? If you're talking about $1 billion of TVL, that's $50 million around a year of funds going just straight to users. The second one is sequencer fees. So all the sequencer fees get recycled back to the users. And that sequencer fees like vary, right? Like you see Base that hit close to $100 million in sequencer fees. And you see like most chains closer to like, successful chains closer to like $20 million a year in sequencer fees. But if you even start out with like $2, $3, $5 million of sequencer fees, that starts adding up. And then lastly, there's going to be a set of like users, like institutions who are going to say like, I don't want to take bridge risk at all. And so we have a stablecoin that is native to it, which is Agora stablecoin AUSD. And that is a kind of revenue sharing stablecoin. So we receive that revenue and we put that right back into these core applications that flows through to the users. So you ultimately have these 3 sources of yield, all of which basically grow either with activity on the chain or they grow with more users coming to the chain and bringing kind of those assets. And that's something that what you should be able to see with time is as that grows, then token emissions can actually diminish. You could keep them if you wanted to, but like they can diminish. And most chains, they can't diminish. And so that's really how you keep like sustainably higher yields on the chain than you'd get anywhere else.
You mentioned institutions. I imagine like bringing institutions onto an L2 it's a lot of what you at GCR have to do. Like help them, like get onboarded and trust this network. What are like the challenges and trade-offs there? Jakob, that's for you.
Is it for me?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it goes back to what Marc said before. One is, capital efficiency is very, very important for institutions in general. I think that everyone can see that there are quite interesting yields. There are app revenues, there are sequencer fees, there are real-world yields that can be achieved on-chain. And what's really attractive into a DeFi chain like Katana is that, these are not static yields that gives exactly the same, these are like variable yield if you're talking about sort of how it's working. The nice thing with something like Katana is that it stacks all these yields on top of it. So whenever something is printing, you will benefit from that general yield. The other thing is that you go into these protocols and you're trying to find where can I actually deploy a reasonable amount of money, where I can do sort of operational due diligence and see where it goes in. There's core apps on these chains, so it makes it much, much easier to navigate. And having those 2 things about, one of the most beautiful thing with Katana is that yields are stacked. That's because one yield might go from, at some point it's giving you 5%, at some point it's giving you 3%, at some point it's giving you 7%. You might have to reroute everything. On Katana, you don't necessarily have to do that. If bases are high, Bitvault will be able to give you, yield on that. If the treasury yield is yielding high, you will get that through Agora. Sequence fees is coming back in, you will receive it. So those things I think is very critical that no one is really solving today. And you can only do that by having a really opinionated chain. And I think that's why it's attractive to institutions.
Yeah, I think having that like firm direction and as you say, like a strong opinion on how some components of the system have to work is definitely like giving an edge in moving things quickly and like bootstrapping. But I come from Aragon. You mentioned the token. Like there is some potential need for like long-term alignment. I mean, a lot of projects, for example, they interact with a market maker like earlier on. Like how do you ensure alignment across the ecosystem on a long horizon, right? You mentioned, okay, there are like 3 types of yield, but in every to stick with the country example, usually you have people that are like oh yeah, like there's gonna be a subsidy and just give it to my industry or to your how do you manage that like more long term?
Yeah, so there's a few ways in which we handle this, right? So I think there's alignment with users, and then there's like alignment with like the applications, right? So like I think one of the nice things with the core applications that's good from an alignment perspective is simply they are so crucial to like this environment that from their perspective, it's like I actually have the opportunity to have this chain as like my home to be successful, right? Like you look at that from like Sushi's perspective. It's like, I don't actually need to like worry about these other dexes. All you're doing is competing against them on other chains. Within that chain, you're getting all the flow, right? So when a user goes and says like, hey, I'm going to use this lending protocol, I need Morpho, but then I want to go to a dex, their only choice is Sushi, right? And so there's alignment in that sense. There's alignment from like a token sense in the way that it's structured, in the sense that like for Sushi, for example, like be implementing like a V33 model with them, where actually the cat token is actually used for emissions, and cat holders can actually earn revenue off of Sushi itself. This will be like a generalized locker that will actually be able to be used across like multiple apps, right? And so now what you have is actually token holders from the chain actually earning revenue from the app itself, which is very unique, creates good alignment. And then the last thing that I think is really important is like what we call like chain-owned liquidity. And so the general idea there is there'll be a portion of revenue that actually goes to buying liquidity on Sushi in certain tokens. Now, this ends up creating great alignment with users, right? Because what will happen is that liquidity is going to stay in there at any point in time. So what happens most of the time is you're in like a bull market, there's tons of liquidity in these exchanges, in these dexes. And what will happen is then there's a some kind of pullback, and that liquidity gets pulled out of there, especially like when you're talking about any kind of like concentrated liquidity, like within the key ranges where there's actually like the most risk. It's like where funds actually get pulled out. With chain-owned liquidity, we can actually just leave it there at all points in time. So you have like this baseline amount of liquidity at all times, which is actually very favorable to users. And that can be done in a way that's actually particularly favorable in the sense that like we won't, for example, take any fees on that. And so all that actually just increases the fees for other LPs. And so it's capital that's available in like good times and bad times, and creates like great alignment with users.
Just with that much focus on liquidity and market structure, I imagine you guys had a big part of like that architecture. Aside from like combining existing components in a new way, in a new stackable way, Jakob, what's something else that Katana is doing uniquely in terms of like instruments available for participants in the market?
Well, I mean, I think that the real, I'm getting into something that we probably touched upon, but it's kind of sort of rewriting the, what we are trying to achieve. And in crypto historically, more has always been better. More protocols, more apps, more stable coins, more partnership, which creates all this fragmentation on this. This is what general purpose blockchains was built for. Just build whatever you want. But from a trading perspective, from a yield perspective, from a DeFi perspective, fragmentation is a tax on users. It's a very high tax on users and on LPs. Not only for like the available liquidity that you can deploy, but through slippage, through complexity, through navigation. And I think that's really the key part that we're solving here. And the second part, which Marc mentioned, is that it's actually incentivize the chain incentivizes people to be active. It rewards the behavior of participating with more liquidity and keeping liquidity on the chain, which in say should sort of like help with this overall flywheel. And that's something that we haven't seen before, and I think we're very, very excited about it.
I mean, that's one thing that, like, just to add on to that, right? Like, I think like when we actually talk about things, like any measure at like with respect to Katana, it's all based on like productive TVL. This idea of like what TVL is actually used. We like literally do not care about TVL plainly. Like, it's irrelevant. I say it all the time, like, and I mean this, like, if I wanted to bring like $2 billion of TVL, I could do it in the next month. Like, I'm like easily. It's just going to be like a bunch of assets that, frankly, people don't want to borrow. They don't necessarily want to use. That's not like actually useful. Like, what I want is a bunch of assets that people want to hold and want to actually actively use. That's going to drive way more value for apps in the ecosystem, way more asset value for like the actual assets active in the ecosystem. And so productive TVL is the thing that matters. Like, this TVL number is like completely useless.
Yeah, we've seen like people optimize for like a vanity high level metric, and Jakob, to what you mentioned, like capital efficiency is something that matters a lot for people that come from like typical markets background, and it's I would say like capital efficiency is one of the things that we haven't really done well until now. So I mean, Katana sounds awesome. You know, if teams want to get involved, like how can they do that now and in the future?
Yeah. So there's a few things I'll say, like, very specifically. Like, if you're like a spot DEX or a perp DEX or a lending protocol, like, don't come to Katana. It'll be like a waste of your time and money. So like, just don't do it. I don't want disappointed people. Like, that's bad. But if you're anyone that's building on top of that or building around that, I think Katana is going to be like an ideal ecosystem for you. And so come hit up anyone on the team. We've got Justin over here, Omni over here, Alex over there. Just hit somebody up. If not, Discord, Twitter, Telegram, the same usual stuff. You can find Katana, or if you need anyone from Polygon or GSR team, just hit them up, and they'll find you somebody from Katana.
Yeah, from just as a close, like what's a financial that you would love to see on Katana? Is it maybe insurance? Is it like DPEC coverage? Is it options? Like what's the if you have a request for startups?
Well, I mean, yeah, I definitely think that on-chain options is something that, I mean, I've been saying it now for 8 years, and I don't think that options has really gotten as far into crypto as they should do. So I will continue to say that for another 10 years until it's happened. But particularly with Katana, what I would like to see, which might be outside of whatever is that, you know, we are seeing more and more government trying to find a yield product and trying to find, you know, a non-native fiat savings product outside of the US in developing country, even mature countries, that these are like all the fintech companies that you are seeing starting, and they are getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and people are trusting them more and more and more. I would like to see with Katana, and I think it's going to happen, that they are going to look for yield for their clients which are using saving products on new fintech companies, and they are going to source yield on chain. And I think that's going to be massive. And I think that it's very, very important that we deliver a product where the UI can actually come from, you know, the degen world into the next billion users. And you know, I'm pretty confident it's going to happen in the next couple of years, as we're seeing all of these scaling. And for that, I would say everyone should be participating in Katana and helping provide a very flourishing ecosystem that we will then go out and show to all these, you know, fintech companies and new users who's trying to find saving yields. And we should be proud about the saving products that we have created in DeFi.
Nice. So, well, fellas, you heard it here. Katana is going to bring you the DeFi mullet in practice. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.